nothing. Why nothing? There's a green bar. Oh, just open on your seat.
Aquinas Carmona and Mrs. Rena Carmona, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Winston Ducaran and his wife, Your Excellencies, Head of Diplomatic Mission accredited to Trinidad and Tobago, and spouses, specially invited guests, members of the media, good evening. Tonight I want to talk about something that is very dear to my heart and very close, and I believe to all of you as well, and that is music. All countries have an embedded musical heritage. It is their most fundamental of communal practices, knowledge of a community's music, and people's relationship with music often leads to an enhanced understanding of the cultural values that community reveres. Cultural diplomacy is therefore very significant. Every official function starts with music, and we enjoyed music during this gathering, and it was very pleasant. We heard music of every type. I heard gospel, I heard classic, and I heard Caribbean music as well. Throughout my tenure as a diplomat in this, your beautiful nation, Your Excellencies, we have witnessed how the government and the people of Trinidad and Tobago embrace functions hosted by members of the diplomatic corps, sharing their country's embedded type of music, which you take cultural music. It is often said that music is the international language, and that is well demonstrated here in Trinidad and Tobago. I love Kaiso, right? Not Calypso, Kaiso. And one cannot help but witness and appreciate the rich mosaic of cultural expression that adds a unique value to the wealth of diversity of peoples of the world. Each one of us have our own unique music that we listen to, and universal music, like if you listen to Beethoven, if I might say it with my Dutch accent, you understand what life is all about. And regardless what country you come from, you understand the language of music. The diplomatic corps enjoy and appreciate your country's rich musical heritage, especially during Carnival and Christmas season. We have the parang here in Trinidad and Tobago. I didn't know parang. I don't believe I can dance, but I can jump with them. Knowledge of musical tradition, when combined with a broader cultural perspective, enhances our awareness and appreciation of the nuances that shape a place, its people, and even its politics. Trinidad showcased that a lot, Your Excellency. I listen to Calypso music, Kaiso. You have the soca music, and we have chutney soca, right? Chutney is something you eat, and still music call it chutney, right? And it's very popular in my country as well. May I propose a toast for increased understanding of musical tradition globally, regionally, and nationally, for peace building among leaders and the peoples of our global community. Cheers. Peace and God riches blessing to all. I thank you.
Excellency Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, ORTT, SC, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, has kindly consented to raise a toast. Your Excellency, please.
Your Excellency, Ms. Rima Carmona, First Lady of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Honorable Winston Dukaran and Ms. Shirley Dukaran, Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, Her Excellency Fidelia Grand-Gallon, Ambassador of the Republic of Suriname and Mr. Herman Grand, members of the Diplomatic Corps, executive staff, members of the Office of the President, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and of course, our distinguished friends, the media. It is indeed a great pleasure to welcome you all. I know it has been a very long journey for many, coming from afar as Sweden, North Africa, and also, of course, from the different cold climes in Europe, because I'm very much aware that there is a cold front sweeping vast tracts of North America and North Europe. So we welcome you all with the warmth of Trinidad and Tobago. Last year was one year that defined our existence in the context of the issues that arose then. And this year is a different year. It's a changing year. It's an evolving year for us all. And as much as, for example, I'm here simply to toast, I can tell you I am not one for engaging in mere protocols or engaging in courtesies. But culture demands that. Culture demands that we have protocol, that we have courtesies, that we have good manners, that we have respect. But notwithstanding, as much as most of you are accustomed to go into various offices of the presidents throughout the world, engaging in short visits, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 15 minutes conversation with the president of that land, I almost have to give you all or express a sense of apology, because you know by now that when you present your credentials at the office of the President of Trinidad and Tobago, it is a 2-hour affair. And it is a 2-hour affair because we engage not in courtesies but in dialogue. That when in fact you leave my office, I must be a wiser man. And when you leave my office, you must be a wiser man or woman. Because we are all in the business of human relations and international relations. And it is an imperative that we must always remember. Because we have prevented wars. We have prevented famine. We have prevented anguish by virtue of what we do on a daily basis in the context of our relations with each other and in the subsisting relationship of peace, tranquility, and collaboration that have become endemic to diplomatic relations. So I wish to commend you all. There is one war, one less war, because what you all are doing every single day in your job as an ambassador. And there's one greater sense of peace because of what you are doing as a result of an ambassador. But I can tell you one story I have learned and what message that you have left me with is that it has given me great joy to know that you have been people, persons of humble beginnings. I recall with a certain joy And if in fact I may single out individuals, I can remember in fact meeting with the High Commissioner of New Zealand, who presented her credentials this year, who was a farm girl, who in fact didn't get a chance to go to school until the age of 16, who in fact milked cows, and who never thought one day that she would be an ambassador, a high commissioner, representing her country. So that in fact she is someone who was an inspiration to the young people that I always invite at President's House to witness the ceremony of letters of credence. When I'm having such a ceremony, I invite school children between the ages of 14 to 18 to witness the ceremony. Because I've always felt that there has been a sense of disconnect in governance between our young people and governance and those who govern. I think in fact I can recall only Tuesday hearing the experiences of another high commissioner, different environment. Because of course I can tell you I learned a lot from listening to the High Commissioner about the Maoris in New Zealand and of people who were marginalized and what is being done to create a sense of equity in a society that in fact has been in the forefront of environmental change. And I remember meeting in fact just a while ago on Tuesday the High Commissioner to Namibia, who in fact was a member of SWAPO, who in fact was telling the students about his life under apartheid. How as a boy he had to get permission to go anywhere in Namibia. And at the end of the day, in fact, when one considered the role of South Africa in the context of the apartheid regime, how his very vision of life was circumscribed by the color of his skin. That he told us about, in fact, the grades of color. You were, in fact, either black, you were either colored, or you were either white. That you were not, in fact, assessed or evaluated on the basis of your character, on your heart, on your vision, on your philosophy, or your humanity. And that is what is great about this job as president. Because I never would have experienced that message from a messenger who lived it. I recall, in fact, when President Mandela died and meeting the High Commissioner to Africa. And that sense of deep sorrow we all felt. And it was inspiring as it was saddening. That there was a man, in fact, who decided that in the context of his humanity, that I will not engage vengeance, but I will engage reconciliation. I will not engage a legal system to get at those who did me wrong, but I will engage in restorative justice. And I will set up a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to bring back a sense of humanity in us, which sometimes tend to be lacking, and then sometimes that we tend to forget. And yes, I did prepare a speech, and I'm not following it, because I was forced to engage in recall when I met many of the ambassadors who presented their letters of credence. And I had to tell you about that message, because I had to tell you about your power, the power that you wield as ambassadors, as diplomats, because you have changed this president in terms of how he sees the world. And by extension, I will in fact change the vision of my citizens and how they see the world by taking that baton and placing it in their hand. I remembered something about myself that I never remembered until I met that ambassador who was living in a country annexed to South Africa. I didn't realize, for example, that as a young man, a teenager in a high school, that you could in fact actually be a revolutionary. I wanted, for example, to fight apartheid. I was in a small country, I was in a small school, and I asked myself, how can you fight apartheid? And I remember going into a jewelry store to buy a gold chain. And I asked the teller, this gold, where did it come from? Did it come from Africa or did it come from Guyana? And she said, well, I think it came from the United States. I said, well, I'm not buying that gold. I will buy the gold that's from Guyana. Because I felt that if I had buy gold from America, given the politics of the day, I would be buying gold from Africa. And I couldn't support that regime of inequity and inequality. But I'm not here to dampen your spirits. I am just here to tell you about what you are capable of as individuals spreading this culture of humanity. Because I want to remind you all ever so often that you possess the power of one. You have the power to change lives. You have the power to change the vision of your leaders. Because a good leader doesn't want someone to tell him what he wants to hear, but rather what needs to be said. And you're out there in this world experiencing each other's culture. And I have great faith in this world of ours because I have met you all presenting your letters of credence. I have checked your depth. I have checked your sense of commitment. And I can tell you, in fact, up to now, I can say without reservation that I am confident that every single person that I have met so far in the diplomatic corps are persons of caliber, vision, who not only will engage in change, but will also guide us in effecting that change. So I have to thank you very much for coming tonight, because I'm in the presence of wonderful people. I am in the presence of persons who, as I have said, stop one or less. Of course, I can speak of Ebola, and I can speak about terrorism, and I can speak about the fact that we need to be more effective in terms of our collaborative relations. That in fact we must not become occasion ambassadors. That when, for example, we've signed MLATs and bilaterals because our head of government is coming to a country, we must implement those MLATs. We must implement those bilaterals. Meanwhile, we must be engaged in a time focus so that we can have a better relations. Yes. I can talk about thanking you all, for example, of the kind of collaboration that took place in the Gulag region. That on Monday, hopefully, because of the wonderful civil intervention of Argentina, that we will in fact now have an international Court of Justice judge in the form of Patrick Robinson, a Jamaican. And this wouldn't have been possible were it not for the international civility of Argentina. And I thank you, sir. Because one significant thing about that appointment is that as much as in fact he's coming from Jamaica, and he's an excellent candidate because of course I know him personally, we are both international humanitarian lawyers. But more importantly, he represents not the Caribbean region alone, but the GULAC region, which involves of course Central America and South America. I have to thank you all also for supporting the appointment of the Trinidadian and Tobagonian, who is in fact now on the International Criminal Court. I have to thank you all for the support that you gave to the appointment of another Trinidadian and Tobagonian, who is on in fact the International Tribunal in maritime matters. So that it is your way of recognizing the role that we play in the Caribbean. And there is no dispute that sometimes in our disposal of our responsibilities, we can falter. But we are not engaged in the business of perfection. We are engaged in the business of human interaction. And one idiosyncratic feature of that interaction is one's frailty. But this is a great moment. It is a great time. And it is indeed my esteemed pleasure to have the benefit of your company, a company that I will hold dear in my heart to my dying day. Because each one of you all, in my interaction with you all, you have played a part in my growth. And I'm still growing. We all are still growing. But one thing, in fact, I have to leave, one message I have to leave with you. That we must not encourage or in any way support man's inhumanity to man. But we must become disciples, apostles, if I may indeed engage in the religious, of a culture of humanity that recognizes every single individual as having the right to achieve one's personal ambition and to live in a just, righteous, and equitable society. It is on that note I wish to commend you all, and I wish to now toast to your good health, to the diplomatic corps, and to those of you who continue to work assiduously in the trenches of diplomacy and international relations. Listen, you're doing a damn good job. Cheers to you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.